Hello and welcome to this digital town hall, Votar es Poder. My name is Aranza Loizaga and I am a news anchor for Univision News, Noticias Univisión. Today, it's National Registration Day, a day where organizations across the country collaborate to increase voter participation. But we are also commemorating Hispanic Heritage Month. And this is when we celebrate our identity as well as our contributions to this great nation. I am Mexican. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I came here about 16 years ago, and I became a US citizen, not by chance, but by choice, because I wanted to be part of the fabric of this wonderful nation. And I also wanted to have the privilege to participate in this great exercise that we call voting, democratic exercise. I have also good news. For the first time in history, the Latino community is the largest ethnic minority that comprises the electorate. We're about 32 million Latinos eligible to vote. That is about 13% of the electorate. That's why we are saying votar es poder. Our vote is our power. I would like to welcome two very special people. They're two public servants. One of them is Secretary Julian Castro. He was the only Latino 2020 presidential hopeful, and also Senator Bernie Sanders, who has a very strong support from the Latino voters. So thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you very much.
Be with you.
So too often, the Latino vote is taken for granted. One poll this month showed nearly 2/3 of Latino voters had not been contacted by either party. How can the Democratic Party show that they actually care about us, the Latinos, Senator Sanders?
Well, we got to do several things. Number one, we have to develop strong policies which speak to the needs of the Latino community. The Latino community, by and large, is a working class community. They have been very hard hit by the pandemic. People are losing their jobs. They're working for low wages. They don't have health care. And we need policies that says, we hear you, we hear all working people in this country. Second of all, we have got to reach out specifically to the Latino communities in their newspapers, in their media, door-to-door effort where that is possible in the pandemic, and in every way possible to bring them into the political process so that we can improve life for the Latino community and for all Americans.
Secretary Castro, you did not participate in the Democratic National Convention, and actually your chief of staff said that there were about the same amount of Republicans than Latinos during that convention. What do you think the Democratic Party can do better to actually reach out? Just like Senator Sanders said, we need policy. But aside of policy, how can you talk directly to the Latinos?
Well, it's going to take, as Senator Sanders said, very robust outreach to a community of 32 million eligible voters who are not monolithic. In our community, in our Latino community, there are, of course, Mexican Americans, Cuban Americans, Venezolanos, Puerto Ricanos, so many diverse communities within the United States, and even in states like Florida, which are going to be very important as a battleground state. That means that the outreach has to be strong, but it also has to be nuanced. I do believe that we have a very strong story to tell as Democrats to the Latino community. Just one quick example of that, the Affordable Care Act, which Joe Biden, along with President Obama, together helped ensure could make 4 million more Latinos eligible and access good health care in our country. That was a difference for 4 million people, 4 million Latinos, a positive difference in their lives. We have a strong story to tell, but we need to tell it. That means a full court press, everything that we can do in every single way in the next 40 days to ensure that people understand the difference that Democrats make in their lives, whether it's healthcare, education, small business opportunities, job opportunities, raising the minimum wage, all of those things.
And also child care and early child education, like you did many years ago in San Antonio with pre-K for SA, correct?
Absolutely. And especially now because as many folks watching will know, our children are often on the bad side of the digital divide, scrambling right now without internet access at home to try and keep up with lessons that are virtual. We need to be making those investments in our public education system in broadband that will allow all families to be able to access a good quality education.
I would also like to talk about what's happening right now and the state of our country when it comes to the elections. Thursday, FBI Director Christopher Wray said that China, Russia, and Iran are interfering in our elections, and he highlighted the Russian misinformation campaign to undermine Democrat Joe Biden. How can, the government and also the Democrats secure our elections from foreign interference, Senator Sanders?
Well, it is absolutely true that there is a major effort by the Russians and the Chinese and others to not only disparage Joe Biden, but also to suppress the vote, to make people so discouraged when they hear so many lies that they say, you know what, I'm just not going to vote at all. That took place in 2016. It is taking place right now. But I would say it is not only foreign interference in our elections that concerns me. We have a Republican Party right now and a president who are working overtime to try to suppress the vote, trying to make it harder for people to vote with mail-in ballots, trying to make it harder for people to be able to register to vote with all kinds of phony ID situations, trying to make it difficult for people to participate in the political process. And they are targeting, more often than not, minority communities like the Latino community and the African American community. So I think, as Julian indicated a moment ago, this is an election of enormous consequence. If you are working at low wages, Biden wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Biden believes in universal child care. Biden believes in expanding health care so that the day will come when all Americans will have health care as a human right, believes in forgiving student debt, making public colleges and universities tuition free. So there is a reason why the Republicans, and in fact, Russia and China, are trying to discourage people from voting. They understand that a Democratic victory, not only in the White House, but in the Senate and the House, will stand up for working people and take on big money interests.
Now, Secretary Castro, how can us, fight, and you also fight against this misinformation campaign? I live in Florida. I was talking to my sister. She's almost 35 years old. And when I talked to her about voting and her friends and their preferences, something that stands out is that they are repeating the GOP talking points about, Democrat Joe Biden supporting looting and violence and the protests and other, false information. But the problem is that they see it on social media and they believe in it. And they not only believe in it, they repeat it and share it. How can you fight against this?
Aranza, you're absolutely right. There is, and as Senator Sanders has rightly pointed, there's a targeted widespread effort to aim disinformation at the Latino community. And a lot of people are seeing that on Facebook, they're seeing that on YouTube, and they're taking it in, and some of them are believing it. I would just caution, I would warn every single person out there to not just believe what you read on these social media platforms, whether it's Facebook or what you see on YouTube, because a lot of times it's not true, it's false. They can go to, if they want to know how to get involved in voting and get registered, if they're not registered and to vote, they should go to iwillvote.org, for instance. Also, turn to trusted sources of news, whether it's your local newspaper that actually vets the news, or Univisión, or a number of other outlets, because they actually vet truth from falsity. Unlike a lot of what you see on social media, you cannot rely on what you see on social media to be truthful. Unfortunately, we have to make sure that those platforms like Facebook improve that take steps to get rid of that disinformation, but they have not done so yet. And so I would advise everybody to talk to their family members, about using trusted sources of news.
Now, I would also like to focus on the two major headlines today on the news. Senator Sanders. Today, our country reached the grim milestone of more than 200,000 people dead because of COVID-19. So not only we as a country are facing a health, an economic, and a social crisis, we're also facing a judicial crisis after the very sad passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now we have a political fight in Washington to fill her vacancy at the Supreme Court. Senator Sanders, what is at stake here for the country and for the Latino community?
There is just an enormous amount at stake. And let me start about the COVID-19 crisis. I think most people understand there is a reason why our death rate per capita in terms of COVID-19 is higher than virtually any other country on earth. And that is, we have a president who from the beginning downplayed this terrible, terrible pandemic. This is a president who was and still is at war with science, with doctors, with the researchers who are trying to help us combat this disease. This is a president who himself has held rallies, indoor rallies, where people were not wearing masks, where there was no social distancing. So to a very significant degree, I think it is fair to say that Trump, doesn't give me any pleasure to say this, is in fact responsible for the deaths of many, many thousands of Americans, and disproportionately Latinos, because the people who are getting hit the hardest by this coronavirus are the Latino community and the Black community, the people who have to go out to work every day and interact with other people, the people who don't have health care, the people who have pre-existing conditions. So this pandemic has been a disaster for the whole country, and especially tragic for the Latino community as well as the African American community. In terms of replacing the late Justice Ginsburg, if you will recall, just a few years ago, what the Republicans were saying is that, oh no, it's a bad idea to replace a justice when it comes close to an election. That's what they were saying when Obama nominated Merrick Garland. Oh, we can't do that, it's terrible. But somehow, a month and a half before an election, they think it's a good idea before the American people can vote on the next president to push through a nominee. And I think that's outrageous. And as a United States Senator, I will do everything that I can to delay that nomination until the election.
So, of course, their argument, Senator McConnell's argument is that back then you had a Republican Senate, Democrat White House, and now, the same people are in power in the House and also in the White House. But a lot of people, including yourself and others, believe that the same rules should apply this time. Now, Senator Murkowski and also Susan Collins said they're not going to vote.
Right.
But, we also learned today that Senator Mitt Romney said he will vote, but the process of the nomination and the hearings and everything, it's a different story. So you're saying that you vow to actually try to delay until after the election?
We're going to there are rules within the Senate, and I speak, I'm sure, for many of my colleagues, that we're going to do everything that we can to delay this. The hypocrisy of people like Lindsey Graham and others, who just a few years ago was telling us that you should not push through a nominee before an election. Suddenly they have done a complete turnaround. That is unacceptable. So we're going to do everything we can to stop that.
Wonderful. Definitely. This is something that we'll be following very closely, Senator Sanders. Now, I would like to go back, to the Latino vote. Specifically, we would like to take the pulse of our Latino community. According to Latino Decisions, less than half of the Latino voters are excited about participating in this election. For this conversation, I would also like to welcome the rest of our panelists. We have Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino, Hector Sanchez Barba, Executive Director and CEO of Mi Familia Vota, Thais Carrero, Pennsylvania State Director for CASA, Michelle Tremillo, Executive Director of Texas Organizing Project, and Alex Gomez, Co-Director of Lucha. Thank you for being with us today. So let's just go straight to the point. This question is for Maria Teresa and also for Hector. What needs to be done to empower the Latino voter? Maria Teresa, we start with you.
Hi, someone muted me. So first, happy National Voter Registration Day. I have to tell you that I couldn't be more excited because Voto Latino was one of the 4 co-founders of this day. And who would have thunk that it would become a national holiday? So it's something we're very proud of. So thank you for having this conversation. I have to tell you that the reason that the president is doing such a great job with the misinformation that you were mentioning about your sister is because he never stopped talking to the Latino community after he got elected. And I think that Senator Bernie Sanders and Julian Castro, who is a senior advisor to Voto Latino, recognizes that in absence of information and communication, there's a vacuum that is filled, sadly, by nefarious actors. At Voto Latino, we are constantly talking to our community, even before, during, and after the election. As of today, I'm proud to say Voto Latino has registered over 310,000 new registrants just in 5 states. We are on our track to register 500,000 voters. And in Texas alone, we will mobilize 1.5 million Texans. I am right there with Bernie Sanders. I think that it's closer than people realize because we are more aligned to where California was, Arizona was, Virginia was, Nevada was, in Texas.
Wonderful. And Hector, what are you doing to energize the Latino voters?
We have a lot of experience doing this work as an organization for almost 20 years. And we know that the secret is just basic investment in the Latino community. And we know that Latinos come out to vote in historical numbers. Senator Sanders showed investment in his primary, and we saw the numbers over there. Secretary Castro has been engaging the Latino voters for a while. But I can give you a lot of examples all over the nation. We have 14 offices in 6 states. And just amazing and powerful stories of people really engaging right now. For example, in Arizona, they are opening the doors at a historical number, so almost at 30% when we're engaging with them. In Florida, we are breaking records in terms of every hour. Every person is almost at 3 voter registrations per hour when the average is 1.8 per hour. I can tell you in Nevada, a lot of people really engaging with us. We have a 1-800-1833 Votamos in partnership with you in Univision, and the phones are just ringing. So the point here is we need to invest in the Latino community. Historically, we have been ignored. We have the lowest investment from all the democratic spaces in the nation. And we know that we need to invest, fight voter suppression, and Latinos vote at the highest possible levels. Now, the final point that I want to make, as an organization, we have always focused just on the priorities of the Latino community. And right now we launched, because of the importance of this election, a campaign called Basta Trump, because we know that the biggest threat to the nation, to the democracy, and to our community is the re-election of Donald Trump.
Now, for all of our viewers, I would like to remind you which states are considered swing states. So if you live in one of those, make sure to go out and vote. These swing states are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and also Wisconsin. So, you know, we're going to focus on the swing states now. And I would like to invite Thais because she works in Pennsylvania and she's trying to motivate voters. So Thais, tell us, what are you doing to mobilize our community?
I think that organizing year-round and not showing up just for the election is key. I totally agree with Maria Teresa. We need to keep that communication going, and we need to fill those gaps and combat disinformation with knowledge, and make sure that people understand and can connect the dots on what's going on the ground with who is holding the power. So we are right now on the phones, on the field, and making sure that people, helping people connect those dots, and making sure that they're ready, that they're knowledgeable, that they know their options. Right here in Pennsylvania, we now have vote by mail. So we're making sure that, all the communities across the board have access to that. We cannot allow, the threat that Trump is to not only Pennsylvania, but the whole nation to continue disenfranchising us. We cannot allow him to continue facilitating deaths, which is what he's been doing, and attacking the immigrant community and abusing from Puerto Ricans, not only here, but also in the island. We need to transform those frustrations into the power and the fuel that will take us out to the polls and out to the mail to take our new mailing ballots. So we continue to be on the phones, on the ground, making sure that people know their options, and making sure that we build the foundation for transformative and sustainable change moving forward.
Thais, thank you very much. So I mentioned, of course, Arizona, and I would also like to add in Texas, because for the first time in history, these two states can actually become purple. And to talk about the efforts there within the Latino community to register, our people and also get them to vote on November 3rd, I would like to call Michelle and Alex, because they are mobilizing voters there. So we start with you, Michelle. What are you telling people about the importance of this election, and how are you mobilizing them?
Thank you so much for having me. I want to echo what some of what has already been said, which is that it's very important. At TOP, we say we fight with two fists. It's our people power fist is our year-round organizing on a racial and economic justice agenda, and then our political power fist, which is our large-scale voter mobilization programs at election time to elect champions. And we form year-round relationships in predominantly Black and Latino communities across the state. And what we see in our community is very different than what the polls show, because the polls talk to likely voters. And what we do every day of the year is engage people who are unlikely to show up, and really have meaningful conversations. The first question that we ask people is, what worries you? What do you care about? And when you start a conversation with a person who has never voted and you ask them what they care about, you then have the opportunity to connect what their answer is to the ballot box and really speak to people want to know that their vote will mean something good for their families. And I'm very confident, we'll be reaching out to 1.6 million voters across the state. And we and grassroots organizations across Texas and across this country are doing the hard work every day of the year. And I am confident that we will see an increase in Latino voter turnout. In fact, every election cycle, we continue to see the Latino vote grow, and this election will be no different. And special thank you for recognizing that Texas is now a swing state. Thank you.
Right there.
This is just, we're here to talk about these issues, of course, and to let people know that, where the Latinos live, those states can actually, become swing states if they just actually participate in the numbers that are expected. Now, Alex, we would like to bring you on board. What are you doing to motivate the Latino voters?
Yeah, for us, we're the little red state that could. We're really excited because what we like to say at Lucha is that Arizona's turning blue, but it's turning Lucha blue. That work was 10 years in the making, and that was a broad-based coalition. So Lucha and so many other partners across the state that have not stopped organizing and knocked on doors, phone banked, but most of all, had those one-to-one conversations. This election, let's be very clear that it's gonna be about getting your tia, getting your cousin, getting your neighbors out to vote, because the moment calls for us to keep reminding them and building a plan. But then it doesn't stop there, right? We have to keep our eye on the prize, and we have to focus also on post-election, what's gonna happen. So those are conversations that we're currently having. But for us, we're really excited because as a coalition, what we're saying is that we are going to turn out 1 million voters to the polls that are BIPOC community. And that effort has been one of, we're out in the field. This moment is requiring it all of us, and we cannot leave anything to chance.
Alex, thank you very much. And all of you have said you have to keep on talking to the Latinos, not only during elections, but all the time, every year round, because Our public servants need to know what are the needs of the Latino community. And so we know that healthcare and the economy are the most important issues for Latinos. Also, about healthcare and the pandemic, about 25,000 Latinos have died because of COVID-19. And we are 3 times more likely to get COVID-19. And most of it's because a lot of us are considered essential workers. Most of our Latino community works on the fields picking fruits and vegetables in California or here in Florida as well, or they work in the meat packing plants or the service industry. And to talk about this, I would like to welcome Domingo Garcia, National President of LULAC, and of course, Senator Sanders and Secretary Castro. So, Domingo, what can be done to protect our Latino community who is in the front line of this pandemic?
Well, this is a really kitchen table issue, because if you worry about that steak or that pork chop or those veggies on your table, it's Latino workers who are putting that on your table every day. And they're also delivering it on the trucks, and they're also working at the grocery stores. And what we found out when back in March in Greenlee, Colorado, we had a meatpacking plant where we heard that there was hundreds of workers getting sick. And then by the time we got there, 4 had died. And when a week later, 8 had died. And we started, having protests and demonstrations, and eventually got that meatpacking plant closed. But then we found out it was a national problem, because 4 of every 5 Latinos are essential workers, but they're not disposable workers. These are people that, work hard every day in conditions that me and most people would find intolerable, and they do it for low wages. But they're considered essential workers, but they're not treated as essential workers. So we want every worker to have safe working conditions. And, President Trump signed this Work Production Act that said they have to go to work even though they're risking their lives and their health to do so, but not mandating that OSHA implement safety rules and regulations for these workers. And I think that what LULAC is doing and other organizations are doing is saying, we need to make sure that every worker, especially Latino workers, are given the safe equipment to work, and also safe work environments. And those companies that abuse and take advantage of them are fined and held accountable, and people are indicted and put in jail when people die.
Secretary Castro, what about the teachers? Some of them are being forced to go back to school. Where are the protections for them? Because as we know, kids can get COVID-19, but they kind of fare a little better compared to adults or people with pre-existing conditions. What can the government do, and Biden-Harris administration, to protect all of the essential workers?
In this campaign, we have 2 candidates, and one candidate in Donald Trump who called the coronavirus a hoax, who has listened more to conspiracy theories and right-wing politics instead of scientific experts. Just about every other country around the world that is a comparison country to the United States is doing better than the United States in terms of dealing with the coronavirus because of the incompetence of Donald Trump. On the other hand, Joe Biden understands how to address this pandemic. He's put out a plan so how we can effectively get past this, including making sure there are resources to get a vaccine as quickly as possible and get that distributed. On top of that, he understands that our children need to get a good education. And so we need to ensure that teachers are safe, staff is safe, and also our kids are safe. I have a 5-year-old, Christian, and an 11-year-old, Karina, and right now they're doing virtual learning. And my wife, Erica, and I believe that that's the safest thing for them. We need to make sure, if virtual learning is happening, that every family has the tools necessary for their kids to do that. And not every family does. And on top of that, as school districts start to phase in students going back into school, that be done safely, and that be done with the concern for those teachers, staff, and students in mind. Joe Biden understands that, and he's put out a plan for that.
Yeah, better ventilation in schools if kids are going to go back, better testing, faster results, and of course, protecting, teachers with PPE. Now, Senator Sanders, What can you tell us about the future of the Affordable Care Act? Of course, right now we're in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of us, we need our health insurance. My mom is actually covered by the Affordable Care Act, and if it was not for that, I don't know what would have happened when she had a heart attack back in 2014. So this is personal for a lot of us. We know that after the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there's only a 4-4 balance in the Supreme Court, and I believe it's November 10th when they will have a hearing on the Affordable Care Act. If they decide that, or if we have a tie in the Supreme Court, then I understand that the lower court will prevail, and that is to strike down entirely the Affordable Care Act. What does that mean for not only the Latino community, but
Arancha,
all
where
the
we are
people-
at, and I want everybody to hear this. The United States of America, the wealthiest country on earth, is the only major nation not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. I am talking to you tonight from Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles north of us in Canada. Every Canadian, rich or poor, young or old, go to any doctor they want, any hospital they want. They don't have to take out their wallet or their credit card. It is publicly funded. And the quality of care there is as good or better than it is in the United States. If what Trump is doing right now is trying to have the Affordable Care Act ruled unconstitutional. And as you indicated, they're going to take that case to the Supreme Court after the election. If they prevail, their wish will come true. And 32 million Americans will now be thrown off the health care that they have. There will be no protections for people who have pre-existing conditions. In other words, you won't be able to get health care if you have cancer or heart disease, or the price will be unaffordable. So instead of moving to health care for all, what Trump and his friends are trying to do is throw millions off the health care they currently have. And that is why this campaign is so terribly important. I know within the Latino community, people believe that all folks, regardless of their income, have a right to go to the doctor, including undocumented. That we should not pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. So this election is about many things, but perhaps at the top of the list is the fight to make sure that all Americans have health care as a right, which is Biden's position, or to throw 32 million people off the health care they have, which is Trump's position.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Now we're going to shift our focus to race and immigration. And for this segment, I would like to welcome Marisa Franco, co-founder and director of Mi Gente, Antonio Arellano, interim executive director of JOLT, and I would like to bring back Michelle Tremillo, Alex Gomez, Domingo Garcia, and Secretary Castro. So under the Trump administration, the immigrant community has been under siege and has been criminalized. Legal immigration has been limited. Families have been separated. Kids have been put in cages. People have been deported without due process. The future of DACA is uncertain. TPS has been canceled, and about 400,000 people are in the limbo. They might have to go back to their country of origin. And also, undocumented women have been allegedly sterilized in one of the detention facilities in the country, that is in Georgia, among other atrocities that we've heard occur inside of these detention centers. Also, I would like to add that today, officially, I said that, 21 immigrant people died under their custody. The last one passed away yesterday because of COVID complications, and it is the highest record number in the last 15 years. So, Secretary Castro, you are from San Antonio, Texas. You have traveled to the border. What actions can be taken to make sure that the Latinos' fundamental human rights and also immigrants' rights are protected under a Biden-Harris administration?
It has been so sad and very infuriating to see the cruelty that Donald Trump and his administration have acted with toward Latinos and migrants to this country. Immediately, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would make sure that we introduce common sense and compassion into our immigration system. What can we do immediately, right away?
I think we have a little hiccup here,
Stop
technical
putting
difficulties.
kids in cages. We can ensure that there is a path for dreamers to be able to achieve citizenship and work so that all undocumented immigrants are able to be put on a pathway to citizenship. That's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will do. That's what they'll work toward, and get rid of this nightmare that the community has been living under with Donald Trump.
Thank you, Secretary Castro. Now, Marisa, with all of this being said, how would you like to see the situations addressed if there is a change of power?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to mark and for people to understand that this list that you went through, it's a preview of what we will see in a second term if Trump wins. And in fact, it is the tip of the iceberg. What we have seen, in addition to that, is Trump. It's Trump first, not America. It's Trump first, not America first. He has hooked up his billionaire friends and donors. He has excused and at times encouraged cruelty to our communities. And he has been unable or unwilling to bring people together for a solution. In fact, I think what we're seeing right now, and I think it's important for people to understand this, is that he wants to rile up. He wants to create these moments of scandal to rile up his base. And our community must not get confused that he has done it from day one at our expense. We need at this time unity, not division. And he may think that running this country, he's running it like a reality show, but it's our lives. And so with respect, if we were to be able to secure a victory and secure a transfer of power in November and January, I think it's incredibly important for there to be an investigation and a full accounting of what has happened in this administration, the scandal, the abuse, the cruelty, a full assessment, and really an about face to the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement as a day one first step, non-negotiable that needs to happen because they have gone entirely too far, and it is going to take a thorough inventory to be able to understand how to actually fix what has been done by this administration.
Marisa, thank you very much. Now, Antonio, how do you think that racial injustices have engaged young Latino voters in this election cycle? You know, after what we saw with the murder of George Floyd and then the subsequent ones, you know, Breonna Taylor and the Black Lives Movement.
You know, let's not kid ourselves. The topic of immigration in this country has very little to do with papers and everything to do with race. We need to make sure that we recognize that our community, our Latino community, has been targeted and terrorized for the past 4 years. In this moment, what we're seeing in our constituency here on the ground in Texas, they're mobilizing like never before. In Texas, 1 out of every 3 Texans are either immigrants or children of immigrants. When you come and attack our families, we will come and make sure we replace you. And that's exactly what young Latinos across our state are gearing up to do. 1 out of every 5 Latinos in this country calls Texas home. We are ground zero for the fight for immigration reform, and we're not giving up anytime soon. It's imperative that young Latinos get activated now more than ever before. Why? Because our lives and our families, our livelihoods are at stake.
Now, Domingo, President Donald Trump's rhetoric has increased xenophobic attacks against the Latino community. If Biden gets elected, how can he heal these racial divisions?
Well, the first thing is we got to stop La Llorona from saying the brown people are coming, the brown people are coming, the Muslims are coming, the Muslims are coming. Look, it's really not about race. He's playing the race card. But the issue is trying to keep working class white people off the fact of the income inequality that's happening. And it's the guys on Wall Street taking away your jobs. It's not that immigrants are coming across the border with nothing on their hand except an American dream. And we got to make sure that both candidates are held accountable for their rhetoric and for their promises. So President Biden, if he becomes president, needs to make sure that he passes immigration reform in the first 100 days. And if he doesn't, we hold him accountable, just like we would do and fight back against President Trump right now, because he is playing and using Latinos as political piñatas, but he's not hitting paper. He's hitting real blood and bones, real flesh. And what happened at those concentration camps in Georgia, or I've been to the children's prisons on the border. I mean, that's the most immoral, un-American, un-Christian things this country has done probably since the Japanese internment in World War II. And we should remember that, and we should hold them accountable. There should be grand juries. There should be congressional investigations. And those people who have abused those women, who abused those children, need to be held accountable so that nobody ever does it in the future.
Thank you so much, Domingo. Now, Michelle and Alex, both of you mobilize Latino voters in border states, Texas and Arizona. How can a Democratic administration find a balance between border security, but also immigration, immigrant rights? Michelle?
She's muted.
Sorry, I thought Alex was first.
No, it's okay.
Zoom challenge. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, it's a really important question. And, with the focus on, this conversation being Latinos and getting out to vote, I mean, I think that it's really important to understand that when we talk about safety, when we talk about what does safety mean, not just at the border, but in our communities in general, that we don't need more border security, right? What we need is more real opportunity and real care for our communities, right? So I think like organizations like ours, we would go a step further, right, than all of those things that Secretary Castro laid out, right? For us, in the long term, we want to see an abolition of ICE. We want more freedom and more liberation for our communities. And I think, as we're tying that back to the Latino vote, that it's very, very important to say, like, we have to show up in this election, right? We have to defeat Trump. We absolutely need to do that. And again, it comes back to that year-round organizing and that year-round participation in our government, because the way that we're going to truly get the respect and dignity that we deserve, immigrants, or, my family is 4th generation. We have 13th generation Tejanos in our membership, right? Like, some of us, the border didn't cross us. I'm sorry, the border crossed us. We didn't cross the border, right? And so, it's very important, like, what is immigration, right? And I think that's a fundamental question. And, we say migration. And so I think that it's just really, really critical that we focus on, yes, stopping the terrorizing that is happening at our border and the gassing of the babies and hysterectomies of women. It is also absolutely critical that we talk about everything that the Latino community needs and deserves, right? Like, the reason why Bernie got such a large share of the Latino vote is because he was unapologetic about having access to healthcare and college and living wages. And we are whole people, and we deserve to be treated as whole people.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And Alex, what about you? You live in a border state, and for some people, border security is top one priority because they live in the cities. And like we've heard Domingo mentioned, President Trump has been talking about the brown menace and the caravans and everything else. How can you just find that balance between, of course, border security, but also protecting our community's rights?
Yeah, I definitely echo what Michelle just laid out. And we'll say that what we have seen is beyond border security. It's an absolute militarization of the border. Drones, walls, border patrol militias with rifles, without impunity. And what we are looking to in this administration and in every administration is that, especially what Trump has done has been an attack on our communities. We have seen an attack on the Native communities also that are along the border. And it's particularly important right now under, thinking about what the future, to really take into account the conversation that's happening nationally about reimagining possibility and what our communities have been demanding, and the organizations that have been doing the work along the border, and talking about the interior enforcement that also is happening. We need to take a step back and demilitarize not only Border Patrol, but police. And for us, a lot of that starts with who you take with you into office. And the only way that, we are going to see, we're excited about the Biden platform really speaking to, within the first term, a pathway to citizenship. Let's take that conversation further. Let's talk about the other possibilities. Let's put leaders in office that are from these communities that can go into the administration and really provide the insights that are needed in order to govern in a way that really is attentive to the needs of the border communities, but that is also attentive to the needs that we're seeing within interior enforcement, the militarization of police as well. Because what we also know is that the same system that has been detaining and deporting our communities is the same system that has been murdering Black people in our communities. So we really need to take a step back, reimagine, and put leaders in the next administration that really understand the issues that our communities have been facing and the attacks that have been waged on us under this Trump administration.
Yeah, Biden and Harris are talking about police reform, definitely, Well, thank you very much. Now I would like to shift to the environment, right? So climate change, it's real. It's not a hoax. It's backed by science. And according to the American Public Health Association, at least 60% of U.S. Hispanics live in states such as California, Texas, Florida, and New York. They experience the highest amounts of extreme heat, air pollution, flooding, and other climate-related threats such as hurricanes and fires as well. So to talk about the environment, I would like to welcome back Maria Teresa, Hector, Antonio, Domingo, and Senator Sanders. Maria Teresa and Hector, this is for you, ladies first, of course. How is climate change impacting the Latino community, Maria Teresa?
So let's just be very clear. When it comes to the environment, I don't have to convince a young person that it's real. What I need to do is convince them that they have to register and vote for people who have shared values. That is it. That's actually changing culture is incredibly hard. What I need to do is make sure that we can close that voter registration gap. That is the challenge in the Latino community. We know that when a Latino is registered to vote, 79% of them go out and vote. But we have 15 million of us who are unregistered, who believe that climate change is real, who believe in immigration reform, who believe in background checks. They are aligned. And I'm talking about people not just in California, but I'm talking about Texans, I'm talking about Arizonans, I'm talking about Floridians. And so our job is to communicate because they know the stakes are high. We had, Alex was talking about why people are so aligned with the African-American community, because under Trump, the Latino community has been living in a level of anxiety that we never talk about. I had I spoke to about 3,700 healthcare officials last year who were talking to individuals who were all the way from preschoolers, 3-year-olds, all the way to 18-year-olds. The number one health issue that is in the Latino community is depression among children. The anxiety among 3-year-olds is through the roof. We don't have to tell the Latino community that all the stakes are on the table for this election. What we have to remind them is that when they went out and voted in 2018, we changed a Congress that looked more like America. The most Latinas, the most women, the most LGBTQ, the most people that believed in science when it came to climate change and above. And we have 400 pieces of legislation that speak to our values that Congress passed. 400 pieces of legislation that address every single issue you've talked about and more. And our challenge now is to say, Are we as a Latino community going to self-organize? Because no one's going to come for us. It's up to us. We need to have conversations with each other to close that voter registration gap and bring every single person to the polls. Climate change, I will tell you, I had the opportunity last year to go to Greenland. It was devastating. It was a devastating experience because sometimes you think that climate change isn't so impactful and then you see it. And I will tell you, and Senator Bernie Sanders can speak to this, the reason that Trump is interested in Greenland is because of all the minerals that it actually has underneath its surface. All of the natural gases, all the petroleum. The Russians, why are they interested? They're interested because if the Arctic melts, they will no longer be a landlocked country. The stakes in the 2020 election are very clear. It's one group who believes about greed and maximum benefit for a few. And it's the opportunity through Joe Biden, through Kamala Harris, and through leadership to reimagine the 21st century of America. I'm on the side of reimagining our possibility because young Latinos, they are hungry, they are ready, and they lead. What we need to make sure is though that we're having very clear conversations, that the only thing they need to do is register and vote in November.
Thank you so much, Maria Teresa. This question, of course, you mentioned Senator Sanders, and this is for you, Senator. Vice President Biden has his own plan to address climate change, and it's called Clean Energy Revolution, but it's not the Green New Deal. And although they're different, they have the same basic principles, such as achieving a clean energy economy and reaching a net zero emissions by 2050. How do you sell this plan to voters in the Rust Belt, such as coal miners and fracking workers who put food on their table via these industries?
We sell them the plan by telling them that the future is with sustainable energy and energy efficiency. And we sell them on the knowledge that what the scientific community is telling us is we don't have a choice.
Right.
If you see what's going on in California, Oregon, and Washington State, if you see the kind of extreme weather disturbances that we're having, the heat waves in Europe, the devastation of agriculture in Australia, we have an existential threat to the planet through climate change. And it is beyond belief that we have a president so in hoc to the fossil fuel industry that he is willing to sacrifice this planet and the future for our kids and our grandchildren. It is unbelievable. But the good news out of all of this is that if we move forward to something like a Green New Deal, we can create millions and millions of good-paying jobs by retrofitting our homes, transforming our transportation system away from fossil fuel, transforming agriculture, moving aggressively to wind and solar. So if you're looking at this issue from simply a jobs and economic perspective, you should be supporting a Green New Deal. That is where the good-paying jobs are.
Hector, in talking about good paying jobs, we know that Latinas make less money compared to, white women. And also this will require to retrain the workforce. How do you sense the Latino community when we talk about reimagining the way we extract our energy when it comes to renewable energy, Hector?
Yeah, and you contextualize something very important, and it's Latinas. It's the great hope. Latinas are the great contributors of this economy, of this society. Latinas are the biggest hope in the nation. Unfortunately, Latinas have been excluded from the economic system. They have the biggest wage gap in the nation of 54 cents, and particularly immigrant women are around 36 cents. So it's very important that you make the connection between those two topics, because the Latino community gets the issue of climate change. We are the one that live in those spaces next to the rivers that are contaminated, next to the factories that are contaminating our people. Our children have 50% more possibilities of having asthma, and especially at a time when we're facing COVID, this is unacceptable. So our community really understands the issue of climate change. We know that it's not a conspiracy theory like this president is trying to explain, but we need to do more education. For us, climate change and all the environmental issues have been a unique element of mobilization in our communities. We're getting engaged in more people for voter registration, mobilization, education from this particular topic. But we also know that the biggest threat when it comes to environmental issues and workers' issues is Donald Trump. For example, on the issue of environmental issues, Trump has the biggest attacks on Clean Water Act in the history of our nation. He has gutted EPA and all the protections on air. He wants to make our air dirtier in the middle of a pandemic, which makes COVID much more deadly. And that's why we have a lawsuit with Air Justice to protect the water from polluters. But the message is clear, Aranza. I know you have witnessed this in the field. This is the time for our community to engage more than ever. Let's register to vote. Today is an important day. Let's educate ourselves how to vote. Let's vote by mail. Let's do early voting. And let's define the future of this nation, because the Latino community and the immigrant community were not only the present of this nation, but a powerful force that could define the future of our amazing country.
Thank you so much, Hector. Domingo, what is your message about the Latino community and the climate change that we're facing?
I spent the weekend raising money to help displaced Latino families who got burned out in Talent, Oregon. People don't realize there are Latinos in Oregon and Washington State. Who do you think picks those apples that you eat? Okay, those are Latino workers, and a lot of them lost everything. Climate change to them is very real, and we had them, we had a press conference Sunday raising money for all these displaced workers, many of them undocumented, who lost their trailer homes, lost their homes, and there is no vouchers, there is no FEMA there yet, and so nonprofits like LULAC and other organizations are having to step in to help those families. Right now in Houston, Texas, it's flooded. We have Tropical Storm Beta, we've run out of letters of the alphabet because we have so many hurricanes coming in and tropical storms that are impacting a lot of lower income Latinos because they live in the flood zones in Houston and in southern Florida and in Louisiana. So it's real. And that's what we got to get our young voters to go vote to make a difference. If we're going to pass a new Green Deal and have renewable energy, solar, wind, these are energies that we can use. And here in Texas, where it is a oil state, we need to educate our community that, you know what, there are good paying jobs in green fields and green areas of our economy. We just got to get that message across to some of our more senior voters, as well as to taking on that oil lobby that we have to, because that's, at the end of the day, that's creating the disastrous climate changes and the impacts, whether it's wildfires in California, flooding in Texas and across the Gulf. These are real issues. Or my friends in Arizona, 120 degrees, for weeks on end in the summer. I mean, it's going to be hard to maintain our economy, much less the quality of life, unless we do something about climate change immediately.
Domingo, thank you very much. And now I would like to talk about the Latinx, right? So every 30 seconds, a person, a Latino, turns 18 years old. So they become eligible to vote. According to the Progressive Turnout Project, the top issue among Latinx voters are corruption, healthcare, immigration, economy, racial, and criminal justice. Exactly what we've been talking about for this hour. So I would like to welcome Antonio, Marisa, Senator Sanders, and also Secretary Castro for this. So Antonio, aside from voting, how can the Latinx community include their priorities and concerns in a politician's agenda?
So there's a lot of work that we can do. At Jolt Action, right after this election, we're prioritizing the legislative session here in Texas. Redistricting is going to be huge, and there's going to be so much work needs to be done to make sure that we get fair representation and fair maps. Young Latinx folks need to get involved, and we need to recognize that Latinx is not a generational term, but it's a term about gender equality and making sure that it's an inclusive term to incorporate folks that don't associate with Latino or Latina. But beyond that, this generation is so powerful. At Jolt, we tell our members the reason we are under attack, the reason you see our Latinx community discriminated, decriminalized, and targeted is because you are the biggest threat to the status quo. We were just talking about climate change and climate justice. Texas has the opportunity to lead on this issue. If we activate our wind and solar energy, we can not just power the entire state, but power the entire country. And this needs to be led by young, brown, and Black leaders, Latinx leaders activating themselves like never before. Over the course of history in this country, we've seen young generations step up and deliver bold and fearless proposals. That is what you're seeing here again. And this time it's being led by young Latinx folks. Domingo is right. As we're sitting here doing this town hall, this digital town hall, our streets in Houston are flooded. If you are watching this and recognize that your car is underwater, it's because we need to get activated and make sure that we demand a better future. We are going to inherit a planet that is no longer going to be sustainable. The scientists tell us that the moment to act is now, and it's going to require folks to activate themselves like never before. If you can, and if you haven't registered, make sure to go to joltinitiative.org/vote and register to vote right now in Texas. Across the country, go to univision.com/vota conmigo and register.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Marisa, young Latinx voters don't feel represented by the current establishment, and they're tired of the cynicism and hypocrisy of career politicians. How can the trust and the faith in government be restored?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that what is perceived sometimes as apathy is not an absence of interest, but a desire for different choices. So we must recognize that amongst young people, they are tired of hearing the same solutions, and they are tired of elected officials who are not willing to put their job on the line to do the right thing. The fact of the matter is, tonight we've talked about all these different challenges, and we're kind of used to, you could talk about wage inequality, issues around healthcare, and you get to, if we don't do this further down the road, something really bad's going to happen. It's bad now, but it's going to get worse. That doesn't, we're running out of time. The generation that will inherit this planet in the way that we've talked about, that generation is here. And so that generation has the opportunity, and really, there's no other options beyond all of us stepping in and doing something. I want to say, for folks who are adults, something very culturally, very, very deeply held in the Latino culture is, as parents, as tias, as tios, we understand when we're working, and we work hard every day, and we get up and we go no matter what the conditions. The reason we're doing that is because we want to clear the path for those who are coming behind us. And I think for those tios, those of us who are parents, we have to understand in this time we have to do more. We have to do more than just get up and go to work, because the path that our young people are facing is one riddled with obstacles, and we must all do our part. It's important to recognize that we are taking action. We must take action, and I want to invite people who want to give un chanclazo bien merecido al Donald Trump to go to fueratrump.com to get involved. But not only are we fighting for a future, it's recognizing that we have to act for those who cannot vote right now, for those who fought for the right to vote, and for those of us who make a pledge that we know that elections are not going to be the only way forward in the solution, that we have to organize in between cycles. And lastly, as Maria Teresa said, we can't be waiting for someone else to decide our community is important. We have to decide that we're important, and that it's not just about our vote, it's about our lives.
Marisa, thank you so much. So talking about tios y tias, right? Final thoughts from Senator Sanders, who is recognized within the Latino community, especially the younger voters, as Tío Bernie. Final thoughts.
I am 79, and I am angry. If I were 18 or 20, I would be very, very, very angry. I would be angry that I can't afford to go to college, or I'm leaving school deeply in debt. I would be furious that we have a president who demonizes the Latino community, calls them criminals or rapists. I would be angry that I can't afford health care, or I can't afford decent housing. And as what you have heard from all of our wonderful and great panelists and their organizations, is that the future of our country, and in fact, the future of the entire world, rests with the younger people. They are a beautiful generation, a progressive generation, a compassionate generation. And what we have to do now in the next 6 weeks is to make sure that that generation registers to vote, gets their friends, fellow students, co-workers, family members out to vote. And when we do that, what we can do, as we've heard earlier this evening, is rethink America, rethink this country, and create a government and a nation that works for all of us, not just billionaires and wealthy campaign contributors. We can transform this country if we don't let Trump divide us up, if we all stand together. And that's what we have got to do.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders. And last but not least, Secretary Castro, from Latinx to Latinx, your final thoughts.
Gracias, Arancha. Thank you so much for hosting us, and to Univisión, Senator Sanders, and to everybody who participated. Today, 25%, fully a quarter of the people in our country that are under the age of 18 are Latino or Latina. That means that the destiny of the United States is intertwined with the destiny of the Latino community like never before. If you want to create a country where no matter who you are, you can reach your American dream, a country where a hard day's work is paid with a good wage, where every single person has health care in this country, where every single child is able to get a good education and get good job opportunities, and where we make sure that our beautiful planet is there for our children and our grandchildren, then we have about 6 weeks, about 42 days to make sure that our voice is heard in this November election. Register to vote if you haven't registered, and go out and vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to create that better future for all of us. Gracias.
So gracias a todos. Thank you, all of our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Secretary Castro. Thank you, Senator Bernie Sanders, and everybody, Hector and Maria Teresa and Alex and, Marisa and everybody, Antonio, Domingo. Thank you so much. And of course, 42 days to the election. So just remember, votar es poder. Your voice is your vote. And of course, it's both a privilege and also a civic duty. So like we've heard, vote for those who cannot vote. Don't be silent. Just go out and vote. So number one, register if you're not registered to vote. Number two, just participate in, the early voting. We have states that are already on early voting. That is Virginia and Minnesota. On the first week of October, we have California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Ohio. Also, request your mail-in ballot. As soon as you get it, fill it out, send it, or go drop it off. And if you're not going to do any of the above, just please make sure to be there on that very, very important appointment that you have with democracy, and that is November 3rd. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful conversation. And just remember that you can always go to univisionnoticias.com for more information. Hasta la próxima.
Gracias.